Hi guys, Mr. Sonnenberg here. Today we're going to be talking about calculating distance. So when we calculate distance, we need to know what the formula is, but we need to understand what we're trying to calculate. So in order to find this distance, we're going to multiply the velocity times the amount of time that's traveled. So the formula for distance is going to be as such. It's in the word equation, it's going to be distance is equal to velocity times time. Now, we can also shorten it up as we don't want to write that out every time. So we're just going to say d is equal to v times t. Now, we'll work through a problem throughout the screen or later in the screencast where you can actually try to apply your skills, but when we calculate this distance, this is what we're doing. Now, one way, because we don't always, sometimes we're given distance and time but not velocity, or sometimes we're given velocity and distance but not time, so we need to be able to manipulate, which means change our equation around so that we can solve for different variables. And the variables are going to be the letters that represent numbers in this word equation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a triangle. Okay, so I draw my triangle. Okay, and of course I can't draw a straight line, but that'll do. Alright, so I draw my triangle and I split it into three stages because remember, initial formula was d equals v times t. Now if I want to solve for distance, well, if I take my triangle and I put distance up top here, and I remember this triangle all the time, well, it's going to be velocity times time. So I'll put v times t. Okay, so distance is going to equal velocity times time. Okay, but what if I wanted to solve for velocity? Well, let's see, let's go v, which is velocity, is equal to, well, if I look at this part of the equation, the other two variables, the d is in the numerator position and the t is in the denominator, so it's below. So what I'd be doing is dividing distance by time. Okay, so now that's how I'm going to solve for velocity, equals distance divided by time. But what if I wanted to solve for time? So I just want you to pause the screencast and I want you to see if you can write the appropriate equation and then check to see if it matches up with mine. So just pause, try this out really quick on your own. Okay, hopefully you've had a chance to look at that. Okay, so now what's happening with time is, well, we're solving for time. We look in the numerator position, the denominator position. I have to make sure all three variables are in my equation. And so I'm going to notice that d is in the numerator position on the top. So I'm going to divide d by, and velocity is in the denominator position, so d by v. So time is equal to distance divided by velocity. So if I wanted to manipulate that equation and solve for different variables, I can do that. These triangles are great for understanding from the initial equation what this looks like. And you can do this with other equations as well. So I'm going to just give you guys a problem now, just one practice problem with regards to calculating distance. Okay, so I coach basketball, so I thought this would be an appropriate example or problem. So we just started our season, so now I always call the first month of December kind of your conditioning month, right? This is where I run them more in practice, and they're expected to run on their own, my players, so that they can get in shape for the upcoming season. So the question is, I'll read the question out and then we'll talk about steps for calculating these problems. But you decide to get in shape for basketball season by running on a treadmill for 45 minutes, or what is known as 0.75 hours each day. If you were running at an average speed of 20 kilometers an hour, what would the odometer read at the end of one session? So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to calculate this problem. So I know the first thing I'm going to be, what am I given? Okay, so, well, I know that my time is going to be equal to 0.75 hours. Now, why would I say hours? Well, because if it's 20 kilometers an hour, like this, well, that hour right here is going to help me figure out what numbers I should use. Okay, so I had to simplify 45, or I had to expand 45 minutes into 0.75 hours. So now what kilometers an hour is going to be my velocity? So I know that, so I'm going to say 20 kilometers an hour. Now, what do I not know? Well, I don't know the distance traveled in that one session. So I'll just do this and put a question mark. Okay, so this is what I know. I know what the question is asking. I know what the odometer reads. So I'm just going to go over here. Now I need to write my formula. Well, what's the formula for distance? Well, we know it is distance equals velocity times time. Well, we know that, so now I'm going to plug these into my formula, the next step. I don't know what the distance is, so I leave it as a variable, as a letter. But I know my velocity is 20 kilometers, and I want you to make sure that you put what we're measuring it in as well. So kilometers an hour times 0.75 hours. Now I need to calculate. Next step is I need to calculate. So it's going to equal, well, 20 times 0.75 is going to be 15 kilometers. Okay, so the distance at the end of the session that I traveled, or that this player traveled, okay, this player traveled 15 kilometers. Okay, so 15 kilometers each session. Sorry about the writing. It's tough writing on this pen tablet sometimes. My writing doesn't always look like that, I promise. It's actually quite neat, but this pen tablet's tricky. So the player traveled 15 kilometers each session. So I could say in 2 sessions they travel 30 kilometers. 3 sessions they travel 45. Okay, in 4 they travel 60, and then they travel 75 in a 5-day week if they did this every week. So 75 kilometers they'd be running, which would be pretty good, and I'd be happy with that. This basketball is a running sport, and we want to have high endurance and muscular strength as we play it. But anyways, calculating distance. So you know the formula, you know how to manipulate the formula, and hopefully you can apply these equations. Okay, hopefully that's helped you guys, and we'll see you on the next screencast. Bye.